Good morning, dear friends. Thank you for being here. Sound check, sound works. I hear you for now, so that's good news. Friday, November 12th, the 8th of Kislev. Tomorrow will be the 9th of Kislev. We're studying the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. Presently, Meseches Shabbos, chapter 9, Perek Ch, page Peches Amud Aleph. That's 88a. We're in a segment now that's pivoted entirely to the discussion of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. And we've begun to explore a variety of relatively well-known Agadic teachings about the decision-making of the Jews receiving the Torah, Hashem's gifting of the Torah, what happens when that happens. We talked about the power, the gifts the Jewish people received upon saying Nasa v'nishma, the consequences when they did the golden calf, the crowns, the spiritual crowns, and we're going to keep on going on that subject. Mark, I just want to make sure, is the sound the right way? Too loud, too low?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Thank you. Again, some of us have had restful nights, others not so much with our electricity outage, and so I'm grateful to all those who joined us. A few of our attendees. We actually got our electricity a little sooner than La Mer and Taramina. I don't know how that works, but
It's 11 o'clock.
So I don't know how that works, but I'm not going to complain. So that's that. Some of our friends requested us to record, and of course that's what we're doing, so they can watch down the line. We closed out yesterday talking about angels carrying crowns, and of course understanding those crowns most likely were not, at the very least, exclusively physical crowns. First of all, how do you wear two crowns? I don't know. Actually, I do know. The Egyptian monarchs had two crowns for the two kingdoms, I believe so. So I guess there is such a concept of two crowns. But the Jewish people most likely had a spiritual radiance and a spiritual divine presence that was very impactful. And how do we know this? Because the Gemara and the commentaries explain that the Jewish people lost their crowns, Moshe did not. And then we have the famous verse that describes how Koran or Panav, Moshe's face shone. And as we love discussing, this is likely the origin for Michelangelo's impression of Moshe Rabbeinu having a horn, because the word Koran means, Karen is a horn. Koran is a radiance that exudes or protrudes from the person's person. And of course, I guess anyway, some of the early translations of the Torah described Koran more as a horn than a radiance. And of course, that's why till this day, if you go to the wrong place in the world, you may be asked where your horns are. I don't think I was once asked about my horns, but I know when my parents were for a few months in North Carolina, a number of people asked them about their horns. So that idea persists. Beryl?
Rabbi, just a small question. I was amazed at the number of angels. Do we have anywhere like 1 million, all of a sudden, those kind of numbers? I was unaware of that.
The Tehillim talks about almost an unlimited, vast number of angels. So 1.2 million isn't even the tip of the iceberg as far as numbers of angels. So
speaking about
go ahead. Yeah.
Speaking about the horns, I once heard about a year ago from the head of security of the Israeli consulate in Egypt, where he was living in a house, and he noticed that the super keeps on looking at his back. So he asked him why. So he told him, I'm looking for your tail, because they, come from monkeys. And so he was looking for his tail. And that's, yeah. Later on, that guy saved his life. But
it's really strange, because usually they look for horns, not for the tail.
Well, maybe in the Muslim country.
No, but in the Islamic tradition, the Jews come from the apes. So that's why he was looking for the tail.
So we have a resounding.
In the Christian tradition, they're looking for the horns. The Islamic, they were looking for the tails.
So we have a big machloikes. We have a big machloikes between Islam and Christianity. Okay.
Right.
We should bring that up in our anti-Semitism course. All right, let me share the screen.
However, the book that Reb Menachem recommended does describe the situation with demons in great details. And this is indeed, thank you, Menachem, it's wonderful reading. And the interesting observation was that the demons play the same role as the microbes and viruses in our time. That is, the action of Netilat Yadayim had not only symbolic meaning, but also the purpose of getting rid of demons that might hurt the person if one eats with unwashed hands. That is very similar to what we do with bacteria and other dirt.
Shkoya for sharing that.
Terminology is different, but the meaning is the same.
It's a slow book to read.
It is, yes.
It does not.
But it's really worth time. It's very interesting.
Yes. Shkoyach. All right, let's take a look at the continuation of a conversation about the Jewish people and their crowns. So Amar Rab Chama bar Rabbi Chanina, B'chorev Ta'anu. At Mount Sinai, the Jewish people put on their crowns or had their crowns loaded on. B'chorev Perku, but they also were offloaded at Har Sinai. B'chorev Ta'anu. How do we know that the crowns were placed on the Jewish people? Kidamar. And as we read in the pasuk, or as we read in this teaching, Rashi. Because it says they removed the crowns that were placed on them. The fact that they were placed on them, we understand that they were placed on. How do we know they were removed? And that same verse that tells us the crowns were removed, we understand they were placed on and then removed, and the Jewish people did not have them any longer. Amar Rabbi Yochanan added an important footnote. V'kulam zachal Moshe natalam. All the spiritual capital, all of the radiance, all of the energy that the Jewish people were denied of upon the construction of the golden calf were presented to Moshe. Why would we infer this? Because the verse says, the Jewish people removed their jewelry, their celebratory jewelry, which our Gemara says is these crowns. And right afterwards, it says, Moshe took them. So although the discussion is talking about his tent being moved, the word yikach doesn't really make sense because it just could say he pitched his tent. So Rashi explains the Gemara's intention. Basically, yikach esa oyel can be interpreted as he took the exuding aura, he took the energy with him. So that's how Rashi understands the Gemara. Reish Lakish closes with some upbeat words, some good news. In the future, when Mashiach comes, the Jewish people will receive, will get back our radiance, our energy, our blessing, our connectivity to Hashem that the Jewish people received at Har Sinai. Shenemar, Upduye Hashem, Yeshuvun Uvot Tzion Berina, Simchas Olam Al Roisham. The redeemed will be returned. They'll arrive in Zion, in jubilation and in joy, eternal joy, Al Roisham, on their head. Simchas Olam Al Roisham. And the Gemara says, Simcha Shemei Olam Al Roisham. The previous joyous celebratory stuff will be returned, and we're talking about the celebration that the Jewish people had upon receiving the Torah. Let's open up this verse in Isaiah. Here, just to make sure. Come to shouting to Zion, crowned with joy everlasting. They'll attain joy and gladness. Anyways, so the point here is crowned. The crown we're talking about, says the Gemara, those are the crowns of the Jewish people on Har Sinai. I'll tell you something interesting. If you've ever spent a little bit of time listening to the audio recordings of the Rebbe's talks, the Rebbe would frequently end his talks, and certainly at the close of a Fabrengen, on the subject of a prayer for Mashiach, and many, many times his closing line would be V'simchas olam al roisham, describing this messianic era with great joy and associated with the resumption of the spiritual completion that was initially initiated at Har Sinai. An interesting fact. All right, so now we're going to continue. So the Jewish people were presented with an opportunity to receive the Torah, and the Jewish people said, yes, I do. Nase v'nishma. The equivalence of yes, I do. Let's see what else our sages, what other traditions our sages had about this moment in Jewish history. Amar Rabbi Elazar. B'sha'a shekdimu Yisrael nasa l'nishma. At the moment, the Jewish people accepted the Torah in a manner where they said first yes, and then they said, what? We'll do it. Just tell us what, and we'll do it. So something very special happened. Yatzasa Baskal v'amr lehen. A voice rang out from heaven. A divine voice spoke up and said like this: Migila libanai rozeh. Who told my kids this secret? Shemalache hashares mishtamshem boy. Who gave the secret code that is used by the angels? How do we know the angels say Nasa v'nishma? Tichsiv, as it states, Baruch Hu Hashem Malachav Hibayre Koyach Oiseh Dvari L'Shmoya B'Kol Dvari. In Tehillim it says, well, let's get the exact citation. Bless the Lord, you angels of His, you mighty in strength that fulfill His word, hearken unto His voice of words. What does it say? Oiseh Dvari L'Shmoya B'Kol. First they do, then they listen. The Gemara explains, B'Reisha Oiseh. They start off doing, then they listen, or they start off with a commitment to do as they are instructed. Rashi says there's an important question. If you don't know what the task is, how can you do the task? How can you oiseh dvarai before shmoya v'kol dvarai? How can you do that which Hashem or anyone wants you to do if you don't know what that is? Good question. So Rashi says simple. Muchanim lasois. They were ready to do koydem shishmo. The typical manner would be hear the instruction and then decide if you're in for the job or if you're out. However, the malachim, they stand ready and willing to accept any mission, and then they do it. And that's what the Jewish people said. Nasa v'nishma. We're ready to do it. Now just tell us what. Or as they say, when they're asked to jump, the question is how high. Amar Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanina. All right, let's pause here for a moment. And so it looks like the Jewish people on their own intuited a great secret, a great formula for ideal spiritual service of Hashem. And I think we could read this as a compliment, right? Hashem's like, wow, you guys did so good. How did you know how to get this in such a perfect and dedicated manner? Let's take a fast look at the Ben Yoyada. Yesh lahakshay. It's a question that hold on, we have, where's Rabbi Allen? All right, we'll have to give him the recording. So he says, Limi shoyel es paskol v'lo lo yisparach gali. Who is Hashem asking? Hashem knows anything. So Hashem is praising the Jewish people, but the formula of the statement is, who told him the secret? Who let the cat out of the bag? How do they know? So he explains what I'm explaining. Nearly, the Ein Zaloshan Shaila Elahu Haida. This is not really a question. This was an exclamation. Hashem is acknowledging that the Jewish people really, really got this right. And to avoid an allegation by the angels. The angels claim that the Jewish people didn't deserve the Torah. And so Hashem is saying, The Jews have got it right. They clearly are deserving of the Torah. So there you have something to sink your teeth into. Where is the Maharsha? Yes, there's no Maharsha. Okay. Continues the Gemara. Any comments or questions before we continue? The Jewish people have become angelic in their acceptance of Hashem's word. Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanina, another teaching of Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanina associated to the story of Matan Torah. Pardon me, just one brief moment. Sorry about that. All right, let's continue. Folks, Shabbos gets in early. And so I think I'm going to end a little early today because there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in Shul. So at 10:30, we're going to end today's discussion. Sorry to cut us short early. But Amar Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanina, Ma'idechsiv, Kisapuach, Ba'atze Hayar. What does it mean? Like a apple tree among other trees. The trees of the forest. Why would the Jewish people be compared to an apple tree? To teach us something unique about an apple tree. Now, I grew up in Florida. In Florida, we don't have apple trees. I'm sure there are people here that do have apple trees in their neighborhood. So you'll share with us in a moment if the modern day apples look like this. The fruit blossoms and grows even before the leaves. The Jewish people also mixed up the conventional order, first saying Nasa we will do, and only afterwards saying Nishma. Let's see Rashi. Kach darkoi. This is the manner of the apple tree. And it's very different than other trees. Chanatas peroisav koidim la'olav. The blossom arrives before the leaves. Are northeastern apple trees grow? Do northeastern apples grow in this manner? Anyone?
I never watched that closely. They sort of have leaves on the apple stem itself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Alan when we need him?
I'm telling you, I asked for him. I knew we were going to need him and his expertise. Oh, want to see something? It's not only northeastern apples that have a problem. I was hoping someone here could give us testimony about northeastern apples. Let's look fast at Taisus. Hikshar Rabbeinu Tam has a problem with this Gemara. Shaharei in France, they also had apple trees. Anurayim shegadol keshari lanais. Apple trees grow like standard trees. Umefaresh, and therefore Rabbeinu Tam explains the tapuach. When we call a tapuach, is not a tapuach as we know it. Hainu esroig. This is talking about a citron. As we find precedent for the word tapuach to plausibly mean an esroig, and there, period kaidem la'alav, the fruit precedes the leaves because shadar be'ilam mishana l'shana, the fruit remains from season to season, and even after the previous leaves fall off, the fruit is still on there. Have a period kaidem la'isei alim. So this is a shocking Tosfos, but it also probably resolves my question and your question about apple trees. Okay, Tosfos says there's okay. That's problem number one. Tosfos asks, the apples that we have don't grow this way. So you could say maybe the time in the Babylonian apples had a different way of growing, or you could take Tosfos's explanation that we actually don't mean an apple, we mean a esrog.
I'm a little surprised at Tosfos' answer.
Why?
I mean, it says tapuach. It's a tapuach. I mean,
Well, here's the question. We have to go back to biblical Hebrew and find out if the word tapuach maybe was a little more flexible back then. That's
tapuach is not an esrog. I mean, doesn't
in
look
modern.
like an esrog.
Hold on. You're coming with the again. I'm not saying you're wrong, but we're coming right now. You and I. Our problem with this Tosfos is that we know in modern Hebrew tapuach is tapuach and esrog is esrog. But what if we'll explore language and we'll find out that once upon a time there was a degree of.
But he himself, even Tosfos, to Tosfos is the tapuach is a tapuach. He has to figure out how come it's not really.
So Tosfos is bringing us a precedent. He didn't make it up on his own. He quotes a Targum, which comes from the era of the Mishnah, that translates here. I'll show you again, just so you see it inside.
But
Tosfos,
Rabbi.
Hold on. Hold on. Look. I'm going to highlight over here. Mitargum, the word vireach apecha ketapuchim. Your breath is like a tapuach, and the Targum. The ancient Targum on this verse from Shir HaShirim says, Kirecha de etroga. Your breath is like the scent of an esrog. So Tosfos is saying there is a precedent for the word tapuach and esrog to be used interchangeably. So Tosfos is saying perhaps to resolve this issue, Tosfos doesn't want to say that Babylonian apples or maybe the apples in Israel in the era of the first temple had a different nature. So maybe the word tapuach actually here means fruit. And maybe the development of the language. First of all, were there apple trees in Israel? Again, this actually opens up a big can of worms about the identity of esrog and apple. But suffice it to say, Tosfos says it's a plausible explanation. Not everyone embraces it. The Ben Yehoyada gives a third answer. I'm sorry, actually, Doctor, I want to give you the last word, and then we're going to go to Beryl, and then we'll go to the Ben Yehoyada. And then we'll probably say good Shabbos.
No, I'll accept that if the thought, if there's precedent.
Yeah. So again, the problem that we have in general about studying ancient language, and this is even true about reading Shakespeare or something that was written 100 years ago, is that we have what language means today, and we can't really, delete our knowledge. And so we come and we read the word tapuach, and it's unfathomable that it might mean something else. But it's possible.
Rabbi, if they wanted to say esrog, they would have said esrog. Give me
maybe,
a break.
What do you mean? That's what the pasuk is saying. The pasuk is saying esrog. Tehillim says.
They would have said it's like an esrog tree, the way it grows.
Well, no, Shir HaShirim uses the word tapuach frequently, and the Targum and Tosfos says that maybe tapuach here. There's actually a very compelling reason to say that tapuach means esrog. You know why? Have you ever sniffed the beautiful aroma of an apple?
Yeah.
So an apple doesn't really have an aroma, to my knowledge, or it has a very subtle aroma. And the esrog is well known for its aroma. So Shir HaShirim is constantly referencing tapuach in associating with aroma. There's a reason why there. In other words, in higayon, in understanding the intent of the verse, there is a reason why we might prefer to call it to say that a tapuach means a citron. And maybe once upon a time, like in the Torah, it's called a pri-eitz hadar. Language evolves, language shifts, and it's possible that once upon a time the word tapuach meant nice fruits, pleasant fruits.
Rabbi, I expect to see somebody with a lulav and an apple.
I have a feeling. Actually, okay, well, I'm not going to go down that route. But anyways, there may be.
They're a lot cheaper. You save a lot of money.
There are probably cynics that do that. Doctor, go ahead.
Did you the concept? I don't know if you ever heard the concept of critical editing.
Yes.
So critical editing is before the advent of print, people used to just copy down manuscripts to preserve them for generations.
Right.
And it depended if somebody, for instance, if let's say the Rambam wrote a manuscript and somebody copied it, and some people wrote in the Shulaim on the side, wrote comments. The next one who copied it, sometimes if you like the comment, they would include it in the manuscript itself.
Yes.
So things change. And the same thing happened with translations with a Targum. So if someone had an idea that it really doesn't make any sense to write Tapuach, because Tapuach didn't happen, but it does happen with the etrog, then he translated it as an etrog. I mean, it's just, I'm throwing it out, but things like that. So that's why today scholars, what they do is they go back into manuscripts, to the earliest manuscripts, to see what wording was used originally, and they see the changes over generations.
Right. And
So
sometimes the manuscript changes, and at the same price, sometimes language itself evolves. Not sometimes, frequently language evolves, certainly from modern Hebrew. Now, obviously, this is a stretch even in the time of Tosfos, because the Tosfos had the question. If it was so obvious that apple and esrog are interchangeable, there wouldn't be a question. This is a somewhat of a stretch of the imagination, but Tosfos backs it up with precedent, and so it's a plausible explanation. I just want to show you the Ben Yehoyada says, the fact that the Gemara says that first the fruit and the trees, at the time that the blossoms, the flowers, the leaves are not entirely developed. Obviously, the leaves come before the fruit blossoms. It's simply that their completion, they are totally ready only after the fruit is ready.
Yeah, the thing about the apple and just the fruit, an orange was tapuach zahav, now shortened to tapuz, and a potato is tapuach adama. So it's like the tapuach is more than just the apple root.
Well, I'll tell you, the tapuz sounds similar to tapuach, but the reason it says tapuz, it's tapuach zahav. It's an acronym for tapuach zahav.
Exactly.
That's why it's called a tapuz.
Because I remember as a kid, we talked about tapuach zahav. Now they call it tapuz.
So let me show you, and I think we're gonna. Oh, I have to go. But basically, this commentary here says, he accepts that tapuach is an esrog. What does it mean? Period. It doesn't mean in time. It means what your eyes first focus on. Because of the beauty and size of the esrog. When a person comes from a distance, first thing that comes into your vision is the fruits. And that's what the Gemara means. This is a beautiful explanation. The Gemara doesn't explain what that means. We assume that it means in growth. But he says no. The larger item is visible first. Boom. I think that's an interesting way to close out today's.
The problem with that is you could say that about a lot of trees and a lot of fruits.
Maybe, but maybe the fruit that we're talking about that the Jewish people are compared to is a strong instance of that, perhaps, especially in the ancient world where esrogim were considered very remarkable fruits, so much so that their Hebrew word was pre-8 hadar, the beautiful fruit. So it's not surprising that the most beautiful of fruits is going to be the most visible and the most noticeable. And so there we have three different explanations. Answer one: there were different kinds of apples back then that the fruits grew first. That's a little dochik. Tosfos says no, you're misunderstanding. We're talking about an esrog. An esrog, Tosfos says, the fruit stays on the tree around, the leaves may fall off. But the Ben Yehoyada says we're talking about. Remind me what he said. I forgot what he said. What was the second to last explanation I gave you? I don't even remember. And then the final explanation I gave, it was that it's what you see first. It's what attracts your attention.
Are you talking about what the Tosfos had?
No, Ben Yehoyada. I forgot what the Ben Yehoyada said. He said. Oh, he says that it's not the leaves aren't fully ripened by the time the fruits grow. Most trees, the leaves are done growing and then the fruit grows. In an apple tree, the leaves continue growing. Again, it would have been good to have Alan on today's share. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us on the Shabbos. Thank you for understanding that in our new schedule, at least this week, we're still getting used to the new schedule, so we'll cut it a drop short. May Hashem bless everyone with a peaceful, relaxing, electric, full electric Shabbos and
with elevators.
and all good things, and we should be zoicha for the arrival of Mashiach Tzidkenu b'simchas olam al rosham. Good Shabbos. Thank you.
Shabbos.
Shabbos,
Thank you.